This incident happened to me over the Christmas holidays this past year, and it just occurred to me that the sheer insanity of it may make it a good fit for this sub. For reference, I'm a 24-year-old female. My cousin and I decided to go up a few hours north for a nice winter cabin weekend. It went great, nothing creepy at all. On our final day, we packed up at 6 a.m. and hopped in the car to get an early start on the 5-hour drive we had ahead of us. It was a foggy morning, not actively snowing, but previous snowfalls had piled up quite a bit, making the drive a little risky in the dark early hours of the morning. My cousin was driving, and we're chatting and listening to podcasts, not too aware of our surroundings. We were about 20 minutes into the drive when, unfortunately, the car skidded off the road a little and we very slightly grazed a tree. We got out to take a look, and by some miracle, there was no damage or anything on the car. As my cousin and I started to laugh with relief, we were just thanking our luck. I shielded my eyes because of some idiot with their crazy high beams coming up behind us. So obnoxious, my cousin laughed, starting to open her door to step back in when the blinding headlights car honks and continues to keep at it as they approach us. My cousin and I looked at each other, super confused, but quickly hopped back in the car. The car begins to slow down and we're able to see a man in the driver's seat, and he finally takes his hand off his horn and pulls up right next to my cousin's car. He rolls down his window and motions for my cousin to roll down ours. We figure it's fine because he's still inside his car and we're in ours. "Hey there, ladies, in a rush this morning?" He laughs. Not really, just trying to get home." "Can we help you with something?" My cousin replies, totally stone-cold poker face. "Oh no, I just noticed you dropped something about 2 kilometers back. It fell out of your trunk." My cousin turned to look at me. "Did you shut the trunk when we left?" "Yeah, dude, obviously," I replied, and knowing the way the car is shaped, we would have seen and definitely heard an open trunk. "No thanks, sir. I think you might have us mixed up with someone," my cousin said, and immediately rolled up her window. This man just gave off bad vibes. He starts blaring his horn again and motioning for us to roll down the window. My cousin rolls it down again and sees him holding up some women's underwear and smiling. "See? This look familiar?" I can literally remember the exact tone with which he said that. "No thanks, sir. You have a great day now." My cousin quickly rolled up her window again and floored it, quickly hopping back on the road. And thankfully, the man was either taken aback or just gave up and we didn't see him for the next hour or so. My cousin and I were both a little shaken up, but tried to laugh it off since we were safe and hadn't seen his car follow us or anything. About 2 hours into our trip, we got off at an exit to fill up gas and grab some breakfast at a Starbucks. My cousin and I mobile ordered, and I was going to quickly run in to grab our food and drinks. It had started snowing at this point, and while the sun had been up for a little bit, it was still foggy and gloomy, making it hard to see the surroundings. I ran in, and as I reached for our food, someone's arm reached over mine to grab a napkin, and I instantly flinched back. When I looked up, I truly almost shat myself. It was the freaking man. Despite him never getting out of the car, he did have his lights on, and I was able to get a clear view of his face. It was him, I was sure. "Look at us, just like old friends," he smiled at me. I immediately looked down, grabbed my food, and started walking out of the store. As I left, I heard him talking to the barista saying, "See that beauty queen? That's my beauty queen." I almost had tears in my eyes because I was so terrified. I power walked back to the car, almost tripping outside because I was so scared and not walking like a normal person. I hopped in and screamed, "We need to get back on the road. He's inside the Starbucks." My cousin started laughing, thinking I was pranking her, but she quickly realized that was not the case when the man walked out of the Starbucks a few seconds later with no drink or food in hand, walking straight towards our car, waving at us. My cousin quickly started to turn the car on when the man reached into his pocket, holding up the underwear he had before. Thankfully, my cousin took no time in backing out of there and speeding back onto the highway. We both were freaking out at this point, not sure how he ended up at the same stop as us, despite us not seeing him behind us at all. He could have taken some sort of back roads we didn't know about, but It would have taken him much longer than us to get there, unless he was trailing behind? I don't know. We quickly tried to find an alternate route on our Maps app, and thankfully there was one that made us go through some local roads which we hoped might help. Of course, with our luck, as we were going through a smaller town, I felt the car getting gradually lower on my side. We pulled over at a well-lit gas station and realized we were losing air in one of the tires. We were both too scared to get out, but figured if we went out together it might be less scary. So we did. We filled up the tire with some air and it seemed to be okay. We got back in the car and back on our way. Everything seemed fine until 10 minutes later when this car seemed to appear out of nowhere directly behind us. My cousin and I looked at each other, having no idea what to do if it were the man. Our suspicions were confirmed when he blared his stupid horn yet again and then quickly swerved off the road to get right next to us. So, this time he was on my side. He had his window rolled down and was screaming at us. At this point, I didn't give a crap and called my brother-in-law, who's a cop. I know I should have called the police directly. It was a stupid move, but at the moment I was trying to justify this as being not that serious. My brother-in-law told us to drive directly to the nearest police station and to call them right away so they would be alert. Literally, as he was instructing me, the creep broke his car, just stopped on the side of the snowy, icy road. We were still speeding away, so it quickly got harder and harder to see him. But from what I could make out, he had gotten out of his car and was sitting on the hood. Just sitting on the hood of his car in freezing snowy weather. My cousin and I did not want to stop or do anything with about an hour left in our journey. We decided to just book it straight home, and thankfully that was the end of that. I know we made a lot of stupid mistakes that could have potentially had horrible consequences, but I'm super happy we made it out alive and unharmed. I still don't know how he caught up to us seemingly magically, and why he just sat there at the end, but I don't even want to find out at this point. This was actually something that happened to my mom, and it disturbed her so much that she recalled it in great detail. Note that it isn't paranormal or creepy as such, but it is a little unsettling. My mom and aunt were driving through the Welsh mountains about a month or so ago. She said it was raining, common in Wales, and there weren't many cars on the road. The roads are often quite isolated in this section of Wales. She said as she was driving, she slowed down to let an old woman cross the road. She said the woman was very old-fashioned looking, carrying what looked like a shopping bag, wearing wellies, and wearing a raincoat with a headscarf on. A pretty stereotypical old lady who seemed to be crossing the road. However, as my mom went to carry on driving after she'd crossed, the old woman suddenly turned round and started crossing the road again in the opposite direction in front of my mom's car. My mom was a little unsettled, but she assumed that maybe the woman had a change of mind and decided to cross back. However, when she reached the opposite side of the road, she turned round again and walked back in front of the car. At this point, my mom's car is stationary. Thankfully, there were no cars behind her. Both my mom and aunt were concerned. My aunt got ready to get out of the car and assist the old woman, thinking she was senile and needed some help. But she glared angrily into the window of the car, and my mom said she was certainly not the type of woman who could be helped easily. Apparently, her facial expression was one to be frightened of. The woman repeated this about 5 times, darting to and from each side of the road, and eventually, my mom was able to drive past her and carry on. She flashed her headlights to warn another car coming in the opposite direction, and when looking through the mirror, she said she spotted the woman doing the same thing to this car. The strange thing is, if you've driven through the mountains in mid-Wales, the roads are extremely isolated. So my mom said she didn't know where the woman came from in the first place. It was almost like she appeared out of nowhere. The roads are like this, so the fact she just seemingly appeared and was acting as strangely as this is a bit unnerving. I assume it was mental illness or dementia that was making her behave this way. However, the scenery, the setup, the weather, and her bizarre behavior made it a very unnerving encounter. I was on a cross-country road trip with a colleague. We were driving through West Texas on a major highway. In the area where we were, even the major highway was pretty desolate. There had been a truck stop or gas station about every 100 miles, and every one of them was solitary with no other buildings in sight. These weren't really towns, the exits, just places to get more gas to get to the next gas station. It was pretty late at night and she had been driving for like 4 hours. I usually can drive for about 8 before I'm tired out, but she could only manage 4 or 5 before it was my turn again. We were also getting low on gas, at about a quarter tank, and you learn from road travel to fill up when you get the chance. So she was looking for a gas station as we drove along. It's really corny, but we were talking about fate, destiny, and some other weird shit at the time. That kind of conversation gets me keyed up and worried, so I was trying to change the subject. She took an exit while we were talking, and I got out my coffee mug so I could fill up for my turn driving. We pulled into a typical Nowhereville gas station. Just the station and a trailer out back, I assume. Thinking back, it was probably where the people who owned it lived. There was another car parked in front of the doors off to one side. We got out, still talking, and walked up to the double doors, each of us grabbing a door handle. The doors were locked. I turned and looked around to see if there was a sign. Sometimes places will put up a "back in 5 minutes," and noticed several things in succession. The coffee maker inside was halfway done brewing a fresh pot of coffee. The monitors that showed the store were visible from outside, where we were, but all of them were showing static, and there was a splash of bright red on the door in the back of the place, which was closed. I suddenly realized I was looking at a huge streak of blood with handprints in it. Every hair on my neck stood up. My friend began shaking the door, yelling, "We need to get gas!" But I had already turned and walked away from the doors. "We have to leave, now!" I grabbed her arm and started propelling her back to the car. Now I noticed the other car in the lot. It had no plates. It was dingy and had dents. There was an empty gun rack in the window of it. I ran to the car, dragging her with me. She seemed to take forever to open her door and get in. She had the keys still. The whole time she kept saying, "But we need gas!" While I'd tried to explain to her, "There's blood in there, blood." After what seemed like a year, she pulled the car out. When we were backing up, I saw through the windows that the back door in the gas station was opening. We had pulled away before anyone came out, thankfully. I freaked out until we were 20 miles down the highway. I tried to call the police but had no signal. I didn't get a phone signal until we had driven about 40 miles and got to a truck stop. Again, not in a town, just a building on its own in the middle of nothingness. I called the cops. They thanked me, and I never heard anything more about it. To this day, I feel like if I hadn't freaked out, we probably would have met the robber, or whoever was in the back room of the place.